alternative investment industry has eviscerated the nation's state public records laws such that there is no transparency anymore. These assets are managed in absolute secrecy, where the industry claims that they're exempt from disclosure because they're trade secrets, which is absolutely untrue.
My money. I get money from you.
Money in the bank.
Young money.
Money. It's a rich man's world.
My father worked in the CIA when I was growing up, and so we lived in East Africa, Uganda, East Africa. And when I was 17 years old, he disappeared in Uganda, and no one knew what had happened. So there was an international lawsuit brought and an investigation by the U.S. government and by the Ugandan government. And they had determined that he had been captured by Idi Amin, investigating the murder of 500 soldiers and this was July 1971. So I came back to the U.S. By myself and had to try to get his estate probated and his will executed, Social Security benefits, his veterans benefits, etc. But there was no body. His body had not been found, so that took several years to do, and court case proceeded, and there was a settlement after 2 years. The Uganda government did not admit, Idi Amin did not admit killing him, but paid a settlement, ex gratia settlement, a settlement without admitting guilt. And so that was, prior to his death, I did not know he was working in the CIA.
You didn't know he was working there?
No, he was a professor studying gerontology, working really focused in the 1960s and early 1970s on the massive growth of the elderly population that was projected. That was what his apparent job was teaching gerontology, study of the aging, and which is work that's eerily similar to my own, which is really on retirement issues. So he focused in the 60s and 70s on the fact that we were going to have this young country was going to have this massive growth in elderly population in the next 50 years or so. And of course, that's what we're seeing today. We have this massive elderly population, and which is creating a massive retirement crisis globally, not just.
It's just we could go on all day on this, but so you became a barrister or an attorney, if you will, and you got involved in the securities industry, and your first case, if you will, your whistleblower case was against when Putnam. That's when they were owned by Marsh & McLennan, I guess, back in the day, around 88, right? You were really a front runner on this stuff. And the funny thing is that you're talking about whistleblowing was essentially front running at the time. And and in reading this stuff, I think your success as a whistleblower today has really been more of it's kind of been a 30-year slog, am I correct? Just to have some success in this, what you've been doing?
Yeah, well, I tell people that, because of what happened to my father, I had my introduction to forensic investigations began with his death in 1971. I, in fact, went back to Africa and with the help of the CIA, met the people who killed him in prison, and I went and dug for his body, and so that was, my introduction to forensic work. And then when I went to law school, I focused on securities and got involved in the money management business. But my real strength, unbeknownst to me, was the ability to do forensic investigations. And in my early career, I started at the SEC regulating money managers. Then I went as general counsel and director of compliance of a large asset management firm, who shall go unmentioned, in Boston, and got involved in a forensic investigation of illegal trading practices. And so and I was a whistleblower back then, but that was in 1988, and there was no SEC whistleblower program then. There was no potential to earn an award for reporting wrongdoing. But from 1988 through 2018, I reported hundreds of cases to the SEC, blew the whistle on hundreds of cases, over 100 here in the state of Florida alone, without ever getting any award. And then, of course, in 2018 and 2019, I won the largest SEC award in history and the largest CFTC award as well. So yes, 35 years of whistleblowing, or was that 30 years of whistleblowing, finally paid off.
Your overnight success, Ted, but it only took you 35 years, right?
That's right. It took 30 years, and so there really was no mechanism to get paid by the government for reporting wrongdoing, and but which I did anyhow. And then the whistleblower program was created under Dodd-Frank, and only really got going around 2015 or so. So pretty young. The program is quite young.
Is it still alive? Because luckily I know you, and then I think I told you I've known Brad Birkenfeld, and I think you two guys get two of the biggest awards. But is there a future whistleblower? I mean, what you're doing is just exposing the truth. Is it whistleblower in jeopardy now, Ted, or is it going to move forward? I mean, it seems like they want to shut it down.
Well, there's the primary sort of the grandfather of the modern day whistleblower programs is Chuck Grassley, who's a Republican, and he has been very forceful with on the Republican side to ensure that whistleblower programs continue, and then there's a lot of support for it on the Democratic side. So there was a fear that when Donald Trump got elected, he said he was going to eliminate Dodd-Frank, and the whistleblower programs were created under Dodd-Frank. So if you eliminate Dodd-Frank, you eliminate the whistleblower programs. But Chuck Grassley, early on, I think in Trump's first month in office, really confronted Trump and said, "Are you talking about the whistleblower programs?" And the understanding was no, they weren't talking about eliminating the whistleblower program. So I think the whistleblower programs are here to stay. They are always opposed by industry. Industry does not like the fact that employees and others, sleuths, can make millions reporting wrongdoing. But so they're always in danger of attack by the industry, but for now they seem to be in place. And again, the SEC program is only about 5 years old in truth, so I think it will ebb and flow, but I think it will continue to grow from a very early. We're only in the first 5 years now, so the idea that it would do anything but grow beyond what it's done in its first 5 years is pretty hard to imagine.
Now, my opinion, this is just my opinion, I don't know what you think, but Wall Street, really nothing as much has changed. And the funny thing about, you talk about the front running, and remember the round trip trades, and which all the hundreds of millions in fines and billions in fines in the early 2000s, which I wrote in my first book, The Pirates of Manhattan. which and the late trading, all that stuff. It seems to just shift. It's like, what's that game? I ever play the game with the kids where you hit one thing and it pops up again here, you know? So it seems like yeah, whack-a-mole. Okay, it almost seems like a game of whack-a-mole. I mean,
It always is. I mean, you know, regulation always is a few steps behind the industry. Industry is constantly innovating and constantly trying to find ways to make money, you know, maximize profits at the expense of investors more often than not. So, one of my work, I estimate that about half of all investing is fraud in one form or another. It's a staggering amount. And so you're always going to have a lot of fraud in the business. And for example, when I do investigations on behalf of pension systems, like I did in the city of Nashville, Tennessee, city of Jacksonville, Florida, where I was hired by the city to investigate the pensions. Typically within 5 or 10 years, the cleanup we've executed has evaporated, and it's the same old games, if not worse, are back in place. So it's in my work, it is the normal expectation that anything that's cleaned up today will revert back within 5 years, or best case 10 years.
yeah, it kind of, yeah, and from the research I've done, how kind doesn't seem. I mean, this stuff was going on 100 years ago, Ted. You know, so, but it seems to me, in many ways, getting worse. Now, the thing is the, and it's always done with other people's money, Ted. Am I correct? It's OPM. I think it was. John Rockefeller said, if I had advice, give people advice, it'd be keep out of Wall Street. But what we've seen is again and again and again that it's done with other people's money. Is that correct? Whether it be mutual funds or state pension funds, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, basically, Wall Street and investing is about somebody is the asset owner turning his money over to the asset manager to manage for him. And, you know, it's human nature that if other people's money is in your hands long enough, it's going to make its way into your pocket. That's just the way humans operate. So if I give you $100 million of mine and I say, I'll come back in 10 years to see how it's done, over that course of that time, it's pretty likely you're going to find a way to make that $100 million work for you as opposed for me. And there will be a wealth transfer. Some portion of my money, whether it's 1% a year or 10% a year, is going to be transferred from my pocket to your pocket. And of course, at the rate of 10% a year, it's what, 7 years before all of my money, principal amount of my money, has been transferred to you. That's what the money management business is about. It's transferring of wealth. A portion of the investor's wealth goes to the asset manager. And the more greedy the asset manager is, faster it goes.
It goes. Yeah. So yeah, because I just, you know, I see, because I've been in the financial service business a long time, 35, 38 years. I've just seen just the acceleration of it and the non-transparency. You know, if you can't explain to a 9-year-old why should anyone buy a financial product, but the complexity has gotten tremendously complex, hasn't it? I mean,
yeah, I often tell the story that when I got into the business in 1983, I started at the SEC in the Division of Investment Management that regulated money managers and mutual funds. And as you may recall, Barry, back in 1983, the mutual fund business was a pretty sleepy business.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, it was before IRAs, before 401ks. So your average American didn't know what a mutual fund was. When I was going to law school and working at the SEC in the early 80s, my friends had no idea what a mutual fund was. So with the 401ks and IRAs, mutual funds skyrocketed, and the average American ended up owning mutual funds. And what we said, the mutual fund industry, early 1980s, and the SEC agreed on we had two fundamental beliefs. One was that as assets under management grew, fees would come down. And the other one was that over time, in the information age, transparency would increase. Well, both of those things turned out to be dead wrong, because as in the last 15 years, with the proliferation of alternative investments and other what I call toxic investments, fees have ratcheted up to 2%, 4%, 6%, 8%, 10% a year versus what they were. And transparency, the alternative investment industry, has eviscerated the nation's state public records laws such that there is no transparency anymore. These assets are managed in absolute secrecy, where the industry claims that they're exempt from disclosure because they're trade secrets, which is absolutely untrue. But so what's happened over the last 35 years is fees have gone up when one would think fees should go down due to breakpoints and reaching sort of critical mass. But fees have actually skyrocketed and transparency's plummeted.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that, well, it's not a funny thing, but you look at CalPERS. I don't know if you saw that recent thing with was it Ben Meng, whatever it was. You saw that they kicked him out last week, I think. And he said, well, we need more private equity. We need more all these crazy investments. And if you go on CalPERS website, you can find all the private. This stuff is so murky, Ted, but if you go to these pension plans, it's kind of like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for these alternative managers, i.e. And but to me, what is also but the bankruptcies, and I'd be happy to share with those offline, okay, which I've discovered have been incredible, but now the Department of Labor is letting these toxic private equity funds get into target date funds. I mean, it's getting worse, isn't it? I mean, or am I incorrect?
Yeah, it's getting a lot worse. I wrote an article in Forbes called Trump's Department of Labor is throwing 401k investors to the wolves.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of readers. And it's a very disturbing development that the U.S. Department of Labor, which is supposed to protect worker retirement funds, is encouraging workers and corporate sponsors of 401ks to gamble on the highest cost, highest risk investments ever devised by Wall Street. It's insane. I mean, it's really comparable to you may as well allow buying lottery tickets in 401ks and just outright gambling. Why not let 401k investors go to Vegas and gamble? So it's a very disturbing development. And one of the things that when we talk about CalPERS, and I've done over 1 trillion in forensic investigations of primarily state and local pensions. And one of the things that one of the insidious aspects of private equity lack of transparency is that the money managers, the private equity managers, don't even tell CalPERS what they're doing. There's two levels of transparency. One is, does the money manager tell CalPERS? And the other one is, does CalPERS tell the public? What happens with this level of secrecy is that what happens, reality is the people at CalPERS have no idea what's going on because they're being
They don't have a clue.
So the fiduciaries at the pension, through these secrecy schemes, basically lose the ability to watch over the investments. And of course, the public completely loses the ability to watch over what's in these black boxes. So there are two levels of the two levels of secrecy there that are both very harmful.
Yeah, and I have some clients who are covered by CalPERS, and they don't, you know, Ted, the average the retiree or pensioner from CalPERS, they don't have a clue what's going on. All they know is that they're getting their monthly annuity check, and but it's sad. People really don't know, and it's kind of I'm a political atheist, if you will, because it doesn't matter if a Republican or Democrat. That's just my opinion. Okay, it's just they all seem to be at the tilt because it's such a huge business now, Ted. I think was The Economist did report there was like 25 leveraged buyout firms in the 1980s, and now I think by 2016, Ted, there's something like 6,600 worldwide. You know, and it's not just New York, but it's, you know, it's the Brits, the Canadians are doing it, the Brazilians are doing it. So it's just but most people really don't understand it, how what a force this has been, do they?
Yeah, and with Citizens United, the Wall Street has the ability to give unlimited amounts of money to politicians. So politicians on both sides, Democrats and Republicans, very much want to have access to that Wall Street money. And so the corruptive effect of Wall Street on state and local pensions is massive because of politicization of the investment decision-making process. People give money to politicians who are on boards of state pensions, who in turn make sure that their firm gets a contract to manage the money. So it's a very dangerous time because you have unfettered political giving by Wall Street. You have a new era of secrecy that's never existed in the last, since the beginning of the public, Freedom of Information Act. Decades, 50 years or more, these contracts and fees and performance reports have been public information, but now they're not. So it's a very dangerous time due to political giving, political contributions, secrecy, and the fact that the fees have skyrocketed up and the risks have skyrocketed as well.
Yeah, it's so hard. Even people say, well, I'm in an index fund and, with lowest cost and the whole thing. And I'm not against that, but per se, but people say they don't know how much, some of these fund companies are lending out their stocks. So if some short seller can short a stock, and there's actual cases I can document, but, I don't know if it was you and it's a great book, by the way, and I recommend everyone getting it. Who Stole My Pension? By Robert Kiyosaki and Edward Siedle. I don't know if it was you, Ted, or it was Robert that said, maybe it was Robert. He says 90% of the population doesn't understand their ETFs, their mutual funds, or their index funds. And he says they've been drinking the Wall Street Kool-Aid for too long. Was that you or was that Robert? I don't know.
Sounds like Robert, but I would agree with him. Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Well, I'm just, one of the things that is finally getting more attention is the whole, our 401k is worth it. And that's one thing Robert talks a lot about. It's something I wrote about back in 2008. Basically, what I explained was that 401ks had not lived up to their promise. They were never intended to be retirement plans. They have never provided the type of retirement security that a retirement plan would provide. So, that's a big issue is 401ks and all of the types of investments that show up in them. You know, are they really? Do they really make sense today?
I don't know. I think they've been a disaster. And you know, one of the benefits, and I don't know if you know him, Ted Bennett.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know Ted. I mean, he's become a friend, and I'm going to be doing an interview with him as well. We're going to do one this week, but he had some technology problems. But I said, Ted, you know, you've created this monster, which has made these fund companies, you know, and let's, you know, this, you know, they manage trillions of dollars. I said, Ted, have ever, Vanguard or Fidelity or State Street or BlackRock, any of these companies ever called you to thank you for making them billions of dollars? He said no, and he kind of regrets so much the monster he created. And not only that, Ted, a 401k, a retirement income, I mean, because you had a background, a little bit of insurance background for a bit there, because you were with Mutual Life Company, I don't know. But one of the purpose of retirement plans is to produce retirement income. Would you agree?
Right.
Okay, but with the 401k, it's just been turning the whole thing into a casino. Does that make sense? Or?
Yeah, I mean the indictment, you know, the verdict is in on 401ks. You just look at your average 65-year-old today has about maybe $20,000 saved in his 401k. The statistics you read that give a higher number, it's because they don't include people who don't have 401ks, and they don't include people who've worked less than 3 years. So, but the true number is probably less than $20,000. And so, you know, who can retire at age 65 for life on $20,000? Even, and I'm talking about $20,000 in principal, not $20,000 a year in interest. So they've utterly failed as a retirement vehicle. And it was foreseeable, and indeed foreseen by people like me decades ago, that the structure of 401ks was basically going to doom the product. And it has. There are steps that could have been taken in the 1970s to make the product viable, but they weren't taken. And so we've had now, you know, several generations of American workers who have relied on 401ks to replace their pensions, to provide retirement security. And lo and behold, we found out they don't work.
They don't work, and you know, it's funny. I have even some people I know from church and the whole thing said, well, they have a target date fund. They said, doesn't it? I get a guaranteed income when I'm 2020 or 2030, whatever. I said, no, there's no guarantees of anything in these things. But well, that's another story for the lawyers, because I've even downloaded the whole prospectus on a target date fund, and I spent about a week, Ted, trying to figure these things out. You know, and I can't figure these things out for the life of me. And but so they're getting very, very complex. So
and they're getting even more complex if they get into private equity. So this is why the Trump administration's proposal to let 401ks invest in private equity through target date funds, that presumes there's somebody at the target date fund who can monitor the private equity investments on behalf of the participants, and there isn't. I've done this for 35 years. I've looked at, there's not a single 401k plan sponsor in the world capable of monitoring portfolio private equity investments. So to have them sneak in the back door to target date funds will only ensure that the price of target date funds, the all-in fees will skyrocket, performance will falter, and so, and transparency and accountability will be out the window. So it's a terrible idea, and all of these target date funds are very confusing.
yeah, as a matter of fact, I wrote a book on it. My second book was Highway to Serfdom. I think I sent you a copy of it about Highway to Serfdom, and but so now target dates, well, because they were put into place because of the Pension Protection Act of 2006. I think, which was another like airline bailout bill, and that's how they became the default. But actually, that's how I get to know Chris Toby, because I started doing research. He was a friend of yours, and essentially they kicked out safe stuff. So safety has been kind of thrown out the window. Ted, would you kind of agree on that?
I don't know about safety being thrown out the window, but you know, Wall Street's solution to every problem is pay us more fees. And so target date funds were created by Wall Street to solve a problem, which ultimately was intended to pay Wall Street more money and to make things more complex. So Wall Street solutions usually are solve only Wall Street's problems, revenue problems, doesn't solve investor problems. So I think that a lot of the so-called fixes to 401ks and pensions globally have been, they're not fixes at all. It's a way of paying Wall Street and others more money. They don't benefit the investor at all.
So, this has been great. So, what other projects are you and Robert working on now? You're obviously, I have a tremendous amount of admiration for you, Ted, because you stuck with it. It's been kind of like my own life. Ever said you can never write a book. Now, I've sold my book in 23 countries now. But what are you working on now? Because this is, obviously you made a nice settlement, which good for you. So what's up now for Ted Siedle moving forward? Because you have this insight that very few people have. So
we're working called. I wrote a book called How to Lie, Cheat, and Steal a Lot of Money Legally. So I'm putting the finishing touches on that book, and I don't know whether Robert's company will publish it or they've been interested in it. But so that book I want to get out, and that is also I'm using that at some universities in teaching purposes. And basically the premise of that book is I call it a gonzo approach to financial literacy. The premise is that by teaching people how to steal, like Wall Streeters steal, that you are in fact teaching a valuable skill that will protect them throughout their lives. So the choice is either learn about stealing or be a victim of stealing. So, and we think that the approach is more appealing. I think a lot of young people would sign up in droves for a class called How to Lie, Cheat, and Steal a Lot of Money. One chapter of the book is how to create a fake resume, telling fake resume. Another one is how to look rich when you're not. Because as you know, Barry, in the money management business and the financial advisory business, everybody wants a financial advisor who is wealthy, appears to be, successful, because they think if their financial advisor is wealthy, he must have made his money through astute investing, which is more often than not true. He's made his money skimming it out of client accounts. But so if to be a successful money manager, you've got to look rich, but you can't be rich till you actually are a successful money manager. It's a chicken and the egg thing. How do you get clients to come to you when you're not rich? Well, you got to look rich. You got to act rich. So there's a whole chapter in the book about how to look rich when you aren't. And so I think that there's a lot of value to teaching people how to steal, because particularly young people, because as you know, the biggest engine for theft today, scamming, is the internet. And there's things on the internet that you and I, our generation, my 15-year-old son understands better than I do.
exactly.
And one of the things I talk about, and the book is based on true real life examples that I've encountered and from scammers that I've investigated. And one of the things is to go to the Ferrari dealer, sit in the car, take a selfie, put it on Facebook, say, "This is me in my new Ferrari." Okay, so but And these are things, or go to the executive airport, have a picture of you taken in front of a small private jet that's not identified, and then put it on Facebook, say this is you on your, your private jet. Well, these are things, and then with photoshopping, you can have your picture taken with Bill Clinton. You can do anything. There's what they call deep fakes that are almost impossible to detect. So young people are, when you teach them about these principles, they can then, as students, come back to you and tell you things you had no idea. You just got to tell them what the mission is. If the mission is to look rich through bogus means, they will come back with you and show you 101 ways that they have come up with overnight as homework to reach that goal. So I think that's the next project is to get the How to Steal book out there. And then I've got some other projects as well. I always have a number of whistleblower cases. People come to me.
Now, do you have a website now? No, Ted, I'm trying to. What's your website now?
Well, I have a website, benchmarkalert.com.
Yeah.
Which has been around forever, since 1999, I think. And then the more recent one is Siedle Law Offices, which is more about legal work. But so I always have a few, half a dozen whistleblower cases that I'm working with the SEC and others on. But then the book is the other project that I think could be very, very interesting, because it's not just a book. It's a book that takes the whole new genre of education. So there could be endless amounts of course materials related to the book, and so I think I was recently I was talking yesterday to a professor at Yale at business school, and he says he loves the idea, but because he was going to have an insider trader come in and tell the class how to trade on inside information. So it's a lot. It's I think a really exciting way to teach about the world of investing, a world which is I'd say 50% at least of all investing activity is scamming. So.
Well, I can't agree. So Ted, this has been awesome. I want to do this again. Let's keep in touch. Again, I want to talk to Chris, because there's a new kind of a scandal going on in Kentucky. So so I want to circle around back, but let's keep in touch. And I want to talk about the next book. I think it's great.
He counted on America to be passive.